Alright, hi. Getting ready to sit down and record some more what's it, Quarantine Zone, and just kind of been watching some videos, seeing a lot of people talking about Iron Lung. I went and saw it a couple weeks ago, just after opening weekend on February 2nd. And I want to talk a little bit about the movie because I think it's really good. I would give it a 9 out of 10. And a lot of the criticisms I've seen about the movie is that it's too slow. Well, I think that actually works in its favor. I think it needs to be slow. And the few criticisms that I have aren't anything that's like serious enough to take away from the experience of the movie. And it is a long movie. It is very, very slow, but I think it actually needs to be, because there's actually a lot going on there. Like, even with some of the slower, more artistic looking scenes of Simon going through, writing stuff down, moving the ship, turning dials, da da da. It's all building. It's all giving to the experience that is going on in that submarine. That might help. But there is, like I said, a couple of things that I don't want to say didn't like, but could have maybe done differently or maybe better. One of the major ones is, I don't want to say Markiplier, like it's just Markiplier, but he definitely has a very, very large personality that is going to come across a little bit through everything he does, no matter what character he plays, anything like that. He is always going to be Markiplier, at least a little bit. And I think that it works really well for certain things, but as an actor, there are certain roles in more serious projects like Iron Lung was that are not necessarily hurt by having too much of the actor in the characters, but it definitely had moments in the movie where it kind of detracted because Simon stopped being Simon and started being a little more Mark. And again, not necessarily a bad thing, just something that, and like, especially where he is Markiplier more than he acts, like it's just one of those things that I'm sure he's not used to, and that like the more he does things like this, the better he'll get at it. It's one of the few problems I had with Edge of Sleep too, which is another one of his projects. It's I think still on Amazon Prime. Really good if you haven't seen it, but it is one of those things where it's like sometimes the characters that he plays become less and less of the characters and a little bit more and more him, and just a very minor thing that he could maybe work on, change, or maybe he'll just grow into it. Who knows? The other complaint I have about the movie isn't even really a complaint, because the more and more I think about it, the better it actually is for the story and the narrative. If you're not familiar with Iron Lung, it does actually have quite a few religious connotations and intonations in the movie. And, well, not the movie, but like the story overall. There's a lot of religious subtext for one, it's I don't know why I'm wearing this right now, actually, because I was getting ready to record a game. That's why. But there's a lot of religious subtext to the story, and like I was saying, even with it just being called the Quiet Rapture, right? That's a very has some pretty serious religious undertones, even just to that, right? And the more and more I think about this second complaint that I have, the smaller it becomes. Because one of the things that I think we've grown used to as an audience, especially here in the US, is that we have almost an expectation that we will leave a theater with no questions, that we will leave a theater without much on our minds except for, oh my god, what's going to be in the sequel. And I think that has done a lot to. I think that has actually done a lot to harm our movie going experience. Because the more and more I think about Iron Lung, the more and more questions I have. Like, one of the things made clear at the very beginning of the movie is that Simon is a convict. He's a prisoner, essentially. And he's basically being sent down as a form of execution. And, the fact that, they even say that the submarine, the Iron Lung, is welded shut is kind of a really big indicator of that. Because even if it's not, how... even, like, if he did everything he was supposed to, even if everything happened the way that it was promised and everything, how would they get him out of that without problems? Especially where it seems pretty obvious that the universe that they are in is very low on resources because of the Quiet Rapture. And one of the things that comes up a lot is Filament Station and the things that happened there. And that Mark's character Simon was a very, if not central piece of what happened, a very important person to what happened, to what was going on. And that's what he was convicted for, it's what he was arrested for, and it's kind of all we're really given. We're given little itty bitty bits and pieces here and there, and it's building these background stories and everything that's going on to kind of help give context to what's going on in the present. When I left the theater, I was very frustrated at it. Because you're never really given quite enough. And there's still so many questions about it. Like, what actually happened? Is Simon innocent, or was he and wrongly convicted, or was he actually guilty? Why was Filament Station even important? We just know that it was. And I had all of these questions going on. I was really frustrated. But then I realized, like, it's been 2 weeks, and I am still thinking about this movie. And that's kind of what you want. And thinking about other previous movie-going experiences, there's a lot of really fun movies that you go see and you enjoy it, but you don't think about them very much, and it leads them to be forgettable. Take most of the Marvel movies, in all honesty. You go, you have fun, you see these crossovers like with Endgame, Civil War, and all that. But the movie itself, the events of the film, don't stay with you. They're not terribly memorable. Because there's not a reason for them to be. And the questions that Iron Lung presents and ultimately leaves you with keep you thinking about that movie. You remember bits and pieces better than you do with most other films. And that's a huge thing for that. And it's why movies like this are important, really. Because another aspect of Iron Lung that I really loved was that it felt new. With the submarine being all rusted out, there was very obvious, like, old shit, broken shit, everything's dying kind of vibe. But the movie itself felt new in a way that a lot of modern movies don't. Because a lot of modern movies follow this almost formula for making a movie. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, it results in a lot of really entertaining movies, but not necessarily good ones. And I think it's one of the reasons why movie theaters have been struggling, why Hollywood feels like it's dying and streaming is on the rise. But like we're even seeing a downturn with satisfying content from streaming services. Like a lot of the things from Netflix just aren't hitting. When The Witcher first came out, it was a big deal. Everybody was excited. Nobody could stop talking about it. Kind of died down with season 2. Kind of died down with season 3. Now season 4 is here. They've replaced Henry Cavill as Geralt of Rivia with Liam Hemsworth, and it's kind of died. And it's not hitting the way that it used to, and it's a lot of it doesn't really have to do with the fact that Henry left, even though it really did. He was very much the backbone of what was going on there, and keeping the story good. Because the truth is, The Witcher is a good story that existed beforehand. What the writers ultimately are trying to do is the same thing that happened with Star Wars. They're trying to essentially use pre-existing characters and a pre-existing world to tell a story that they want to tell, instead of the story that is already there. And it never really works. And the reason for that is that the primary fan base that you're going to get with that particular format is that your predominant viewers are going to be the pre-existing fans of that thing. Like with The Witcher, you're going to have pre-existing fans of The Witchers, whether it be the books, the games, or both. With something like Star Wars, again, the majority of people you're going to get seeing it are people who are fans of the movies, the books, the shows, or all three. And people have talked to death about how deaf and blind Disney has been with that whole thing. When they initially bought the property and deciding what was canon, what wasn't, what went into Legends, what's going forward, and then that whole thing with Kathleen Kennedy saying, well, it's not like there's books or comic books or anything that we can pull stories from, even though there were, I think, hundreds to thousands of books, graphic novels, games, all sorts of things that they could have pulled story and content from, that was just ignored. And you start seeing that same thing happening with a lot of stories. Like with the Netflix adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's a pre-existing story with characters that were well done, well fleshed out, and enjoyable. When they first started talking about doing it, there was nothing but excitement, nothing but hope. And then all of a sudden that died out because they started changing things that they didn't need to. And this is kind of leading into another thing with Iron Lung that I think was really, really well done, where you have other adaptations like The Witcher, like Avatar: The Last Airbender. They're telling a story different from the original in a fair few ways, which sometimes it's acceptable and fine, because sometimes you can't perfectly adapt a novel to a movie. You do sometimes have to take things out or modify them to fit into a new format. But you can't take out the important bits. One really good example is Sokka. And some people on the internet have talked about this to death, so I'm just going to cut very brief. In the cartoon, at the very beginning of the show, Sokka was extremely sexist and just kind of being awful to women in general. And they removed that from his character entirely for the live action version. And this is bad for a couple of reasons. One being that it removed the basis for his and Suki's relationship later in the story, and it removed character growth. Because a lot of people were saying, like, oh, it's not necessary to the story, it's just bad to have in there, blah, 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 blah. But it removes growth. And when you start taking away the soul of something like that and removing things from a story to adapt it, you take things away, which is where Markiplier once again did actually very, very well. He did not take anything out of Iron Lung. Pretty much everything that's in the game is in the movie. He added things to adapt. He added other characters to make things make more sense. He added new things. Like there was a scene later in the movie where he's hallucinating like wild. That was in the game. And it made for a better adaptation because you have everything that's there with more. It leaves you wanting more now. And it was very, very well done. So I think, again, this is a very good movie. I think Markiplier did a really good job. And like I said, the more and more I think about it, the more and more my only real criticism of the movie is that for a more serious tone that it was going for, Markiplier could have done maybe a little bit more to be Simon instead of letting Simon be Mark. And I hope he makes more movies. I think that Iron Lung being the disruption to the industry that it has been is important because we need more movies like this. We really do. And I guess I just want to congratulate him really quick on making over 10 times his original budget back. I hope that you take what you need and give quite a bit to your crew because they deserve it. Doing those stunts yourself is pretty brave. Very enjoyable. You did a good job. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't seen the movie, go see it and see what I'm talking about for yourself. And I will see you guys very soon for more Quarantine Zone. Bye.